Midnight Gaming saw a roster mania that included essentially a 2-for-2 trade with UYU that had a lot of people scratching their heads. However, Zaptius and Royalty, with the addition of Frosty to the mix, has made this Midnight Gaming squad look almost as good as their initial team from after the PLQ. Had a chance to sit with Brian Saint and talk about this squad and their strengths going into Pool F in this episode of 32 on 32. What up, COD fans? Welcome back. IHOLDSHIFT with you guys, and we're dealing with Midnight Esports. As again, I gotta fiddle with my chair. I'm just not quite getting in that comfort zone, you know what I mean? This is gonna be an interesting one, because I think a lot of people are still looking at Midnight Esports as not being that great of a team, and my questions become mostly just why. They've shown that they're able to provide a lot of good hardpoint rotations, a lot of good in control. It just comes down to their search and destroy. Can they start to clean things up? We'll look at that more specifically here in this episode. But before we go into it, again, I want to talk about this pool as a whole. You're dealing with 100 Thieves, which, again, is a tall task for anybody to deal with. But you're also looking at Sicario and Fury, both teams that have a lot of experience competitively, dealing with some former pros, and a number of kind of upstarting up-and-comers that have either recently turned 18 or have been kind of found in the weedworks, just sitting on the outside looking in and are finally getting a chance to shine. So I think you'd be a little bit worried about Midnight, just generally speaking, as far as will they be able to take down the teams that are below them in the open bracket, but more importantly, are they going to be able to put up another strong contest versus a team like 100 Thieves? Again, we take a look back at this roster in specific. It's been one heck of a journey. Again, that PLQ team that was able to qualify looked incredible. They were like 7-2 in their first couple of weeks in the actual CWL. And then some changes happened. It was a top 16 at Fort Worth, a top 12 at London, a top 16 at Anaheim, and a top 12 at Miami. Very, very back and forth. But since the time that this roster has made changes, this is one of the best that this team has looked, and I really do mean that when I say it. Again, they're sitting at a very comfortable 6-4 in hardpoint and 4-2 in control, and their averages in those modes, hold on to your horses here, are some of the best in the league. And some of the best since the roster mania change period. In fact, since they changed rosters, Midnight holds a better average differential in the hardpoint than Luminosity does. Beyond that, they also hold a better control differential than Luminosity does. In fact, as far as differentials go in control, this is technically, again, abbreviated stats, but this is the best control team in the game. 2.67 for them to 1.17 against them. Pretty impressive when it comes down to it. Again, their win-loss is not the greatest there. It's good. It's not great. It's good. It's 4-2, so that is what it is. But 6-4 as well in the hardpoint. But the differentials are great. Again, that means that when this team wins, they win pretty big. And when they lose, their losses are just narrow. They're a little bit more on the close side of things, which, again, I had a chance to talk to Brian Saint, their coach, about how some of their hardpoint losses have come down to 1.5 hills in total, which is 100% true and 100% the case. It just comes down to me is this team able to find the familiarity to be better at search and destroy? That's where I feel like this pool in specific is at its weakest. So it comes down to, can they get themselves polished and find themselves even more of an advantage in this pool? I like this team a lot. I really do, and I think they can absolutely make a run. It just comes down to, will they show up hot? Because we know how hot and cold that the Parasite teams end up starting on. Either they come out looking like an absolute menace, or that it takes them 2.5 maps to finally warm up. I don't believe that they're going to have the room to really kind of play around with if they do start cold. Even against a team like Fury, if they start cold and Fury starts hot, that very well could be an upset in the making. So for Midnight, there's not a lot of room to work with, but the ceiling is very, very high. The floor is low, the ceiling is high. I think that's the best way of kind of framing it for this squad as a whole. And talking about Zaptius and Royalty, these are two guys that were not getting a lot of love when they were on UYU. And yeah, I think mostly because they were on UYU and didn't have great, really kind of supporting casts behind them. And we also learned from Brian that they didn't play the roles that they really were comfortable playing. They've looked a lot better when it comes to Midnight in specific. You take a look at Zaptius. Since his time in the Pro League, he's averaging a 1.13 rating as an entry SOG, and his KD is sitting at a 0.93. Again, not bad. It's pretty actually decent. It's right up there. Not top 5 worthy, but it's in the conversation as being a pretty solid stat line for this guy. So again, you're starting to see that with Frosty in the mix, and you're also dealing with Parasite and Lamagod, that they're starting to find a pretty solid setup for these guys to really start to show and showcase since that SMG change. Now again, I had a chance to sit down and talk with Brian Saint about this roster, where it's finding its success, and what might fuel them to getting out of the pools in a lot easier fashion than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for. So take a listen to this episode if you have my attention. Joining me now from Midnight is head coach Brian Saint. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the name and the face. So you have my attention, Brian. This Midnight squad was a little bit under fire since Roster Mania with the changes that happened, but the pieces are all working together, and you guys are looking really solid as one of actually since Roster Mania period, one of the best hardpoint and respawn teams as a whole out there. So kind of tell me about this roster and how it was put together and kind of the successes that you've kind of been featuring since this team.
I mean, with our old roster to start off, it was like a really like toxic environment. There was always arguments. I mean, players with like bad work ethics, not waking up on time, not like showing up to scrims on LAN, and stuff like that. So I mean, I pretty much had full control for the most part putting together this roster. So I wanted to go for players that I thought had a lot of skill and were really undervalued on their past teams, which is kind of what I went for. I saw a lot of skill and potential in Royalty and Zap. So we kind of went and made a 2-for-2 trade for them, and then I was hearing Frosty was on the market, so I mean, I felt like we needed to grab him 100%.
And Royalty and Zap, it was interesting because at one point in time when Zapdos was first brought back up, everyone was kind of like, is he really going to fix the problems? But I think you actually hit it really nicely. The fact that Royalty and Zap putting together, both of them kind of rose to the occasion, helped UIU a lot, and it seems like that double SMG, for instance, is really kind of giving you guys some flavor as well. Specifically, again, this hardpoint has been super impressive. You guys are sitting at a plus 30, about 6 differential on average per map since the changes. Is it mostly due to the presence that Royalty and Zap are bringing, or is it just that everyone's fitting together with this kind of new mentality that's been brought in?
I mean, they definitely bring in a lot. I think Royalty and Zap have been easily 2 of our best players since we brought them in. Back on UIU, I mean, like, their AR support on that team, like, they all had, like, really good players around them in their own rights, but I think the combination of, like, Pars, Methods, and Mayhem together kind of just left them out to dry a lot because they're both really fast players. And their roles were a little messed up on that team. I mean, they had Zap running Tempest for a while, and then they put him on, like, War Machine, but he always wanted to run Grapple the whole time, and Royalty always wanted to run War Machine, so we kind of went with that from the start, and I think that's been working really good. I think both of them have been making a ton of improvements. I mean, Zap's on watching theater, watching VOD every single day. That kid really wants it, and I think he's hit a whole new level with this team. I mean, same as Royalty, who's been underperforming a lot since before he came to us.
Now, I want to kind of transition the talk over to the search and destroy because this has been, I would say, your guys' biggest weakness statistic-wise.
Yep,
but
100%.
what a lot of people aren't noticing is the simple fact that a lot of the games that you guys play are actually really, really close, like round 9 or above. So when it comes to closing out these maps, where do you guys kind of feel like your weaknesses were before? Was it a preparation or familiarity thing, or is there something that you guys were kind of just missing as a whole?
I think it's just like getting used to each other playing S&D because we kind of, I mean, when you're doing like a full roster overhaul, S&D is going to take the longest to kind of get in form. I mean, look at the FaZe roster right now. When they came together, their S&D was really bad for a while, and they finally have been learning how to play S&D together. So I think it's mostly that everyone on the team knows how to play S&D. Our old roster was really good at S&D, and that was our best game mode. So I think we're finally getting in that groove. We've been scrimming S&D a bit, and our S&D has looked really good. I think we scrimmed FaZe in it recently, and I think it was like 4-1 for us or something like that. But our S&D has been looking really solid, and I think at Miami, hardpoint was our issue. We were losing our hardpoints there. I mean, barely. They're all one-hill games, but I think our hardpoints improved a lot since Miami, and it's definitely looking like our best game mode. So if we just step it up a little bit more in S&D, I think we're gonna surprise a lot of teams at the champs.
Now, speaking of surprising a lot of teams, you guys are in what I think is actually one of the more difficult pools from top to bottom. You got 100 Thieves, the top 6. Again, it puts them a little bit lower and into the mix a little bit more. But you guys have actually beat 100 Thieves once before. It was a while back with a different roster. But does that kind of give a little bit of confidence when it comes to approaching a squad like 100 Thieves that looks so complete across a lot of different maps and modes, combined? Does it give you a little bit of a boost knowing that, hey, these guys, out of the 10 losses they have this year, we're one of them? Does that kind of give you some extra feel when it comes to coming to this pool?
Yeah, I know. Parasite has a lot of confidence against them, and I think our new roster matches up really well against them. I mean, with the SOG buffs and everything, I think our SOG presence is just a lot more aggressive and in your face than theirs. So I think our SOGs are going to match up really well against them, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if we beat them. I mean, we haven't scrimmed them at all, so they don't really know what to expect going into us. And I mean, we're going to have a lot of VOD and a lot of look over on them. And the only top team, like top team we've been scrimming is FaZe, and they hit us up to scrim all the time because we play them really well. Yeah, so I think we're going to surprise a lot of top teams at champs.
When it comes to approaching the open team specifically, you guys are an interesting pool because you've got two open teams that have a lot of pro, or at least previous pro experience to kind of help guide them and lead them. When it comes to approaching those matchups and specifically, I mean, obviously the giant at the top is you beat 100 Thieves, then your chances of getting out of pools are that much greater. But obviously, if you can just take care of the two pools that are, or pardon me, the two teams that are in the open bracket, that's also kind of a win condition to get through the bracket as a whole. So when it comes to approaching Sicario and Fury specifically, is there anything that you're looking at, or maybe some previous experience that you're kind of using to try to help identify where the strengths or weaknesses of are those two squads?
I mean, with our first match being Fury, I mean, they're pretty much all of Zap's like good friends, like kind of like his whole circle that he like came up with and stuff. So he knows a lot about them. I mean, we're not taking any teams lightly as champs. If you get one loss in pools, you're in a pretty bad spot. So we're gonna be going in with confidence against both of them. I mean, it's good that we get to see Sicario play 100T before we get to play them. They're the one I'm a little bit more nervous about because I think they have a lot more vets, they have a lot more experience. So it's good that we get to see them play 100T beforehand. And yeah, that's really it.
Fair enough. Well, any last thoughts? I mean, you kind of went through a little bit of a journey, you know, kind of coaching around. I mean, any thoughts you want to just kind of share about World Championships and anything else you want to kind of lay out in the air as far as this team or yourself goes?
I mean, this is the best I felt about a team since back on EU, kind of going into Vegas. I have such high expectations for these guys. I mean, I'm not like trying to like give out like fake confidence or anything like that, but our scrims have been exceptional. I mean, we play phase a lot, and the map count is like a bad series versus them for us is generally like a 5-4 or something. Like we've been playing them super well, and when we play like the lower tier pro teams, series counts are usually like 8-1, 9-0 for us. I mean, the team has been firing on all cylinders. They're getting along together really well, and I mean, everyone's feeling super good about champs. I mean, there's so much on the line with this tournament with franchising coming up, and everyone knows how much it means. It's not just the ring, it's not just the money at this point. If you do well at this tournament, it's going to impact so much in getting a franchise spot next year. So everyone knows how much this means, and everyone's putting in the extra work to make it happen.
Well, hopefully we see some positive things coming out of you guys in Pool F. Very excited. Brian, thanks so much for taking the time. Pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure talking to you.
You got it. Again, massive shout outs to Brian Saint, really awesome, nice guy that was very thrilling to be on the show and to kind of pick his brain about this Midnight team. And since his time coaching with E United and switching on over, he's done a lot of work with this Midnight squad, taking the head honcho as far as who's controlling the moves and how this team is able to approach the rest of the season. So very excited. Again, this pool, I have them beating Fury. I think the game versus Sicario is going to be close, but like he mentions in the interview, he's going to have a chance to sit down and look at that game versus 100 Thieves and see where exactly the strengths and weaknesses of a team like Sicario are and how that matches up head-to-head versus his own team in Midnight. So I feel pretty confident that this team is going to be able to put together quite a run. I think it would definitely be a surprise if they only finish top 24 with a third place finish in the pool. I think it's very possible that they could even finish on top. Again, they've beaten 100 Thieves before. That was with a much different roster, but they've again shown that it's very possible that 100 Thieves can bleed and can lose to their own hands. So we'll see exactly what happens. I hope you guys are enjoying the series. Again, thank you guys so much for the positive feedback. It's been pretty incredible to see how much more social interaction we're getting with these videos. So if you enjoy this type of stuff, get out there, retweet it, share, tag a couple of friends in the post that I made out there. See if we can get a couple extra eyes on it. Just to, give some more people the information that they might be looking for but don't know where to find it quite yet. Till the next one, though, hope you guys keep pulling it down. Later. Bye-bye.